Hello, everybody. Today I wanted to make a video on the Washington Commanders and do a schedule prediction, and kind of my expectation for the Washington Commanders this year, especially since I am a Washington Commanders fan. With that being said, I don't think that my prediction holds any bias. I have been disappointed far too many times to say that the Commanders are going to be better than they are. Um, so I just wanted to go through their depth chart. I mean, I want to say this. I think that Washington is better than people are saying they are. But I think it is kind of deserved because Washington disappoints every year. Um, no one expected them to be title contenders last year or even a team that was going to win a playoff game. But, I saw people legitimately pick them to win the NFC East. Um, and, they're just disappointing, and they have been disappointing. And this is another year where I feel like they are going to probably disappoint. I hope they don't because I think that their roster is good enough to compete for the NFC East, and contend, at least in a playoff game. Um, and it irritates me when I see people on social media kind of write them off. But at the same time, when you disappoint every year like Washington does, what are you supposed to do other than write them off? And for me, it's harder because obviously I'm a Washington fan. I love Washington and I want them to win every game they play. But, you know, they disappoint, and there's no denying that. So, in terms of their depth chart, Carson Wentz, I think people are a little bit dismissive of Carson Wentz. I think that he is a little bit underrated at this point. People don't think he's a good quarterback, or certainly not a quarterback that's capable of his Philadelphia form. Um, I think the Colts were a great team last year, and they crumbled in the last game of the year. I mean, it was embarrassing, but I think it was mostly a fluke. Either way, is it Carson Wentz's fault? Yeah, sure, it is. I mean, that's part of being a quarterback. He didn't win that game, and he has to take some responsibility for that. I think Carson Wentz will be a step up from Taylor Heinicke, and I think that he will be able to win more games than Taylor Heinicke. So in that sense, I don't think he's a great quarterback, but I would say he's average, maybe like right at 16 in terms of the entire league. And I think that the combination between Carson Wentz and Terry McLaurin could be very good. I mean, Carson Wentz is probably the best quarterback that Terry McLaurin has ever had, assuming that he comes in and does a better job than Taylor Heinicke. Antonio Gibson and J.D. McKissic, the Redskins did a great job of, I'm just going to call them Redskins Commanders. I interchange. I apologize. But J.D. McKissic, the Commanders did a great job of signing him because they weren't going to sign him, or they weren't going to match the Bills' offer, or the Bills offered more, or whatever. J.D. McKissic wanted to stay, and I guess the Commanders did end up matching the offer. And there was a short point where J.D. McKissic intended to go to the Bills, and then he actually stayed in Washington. J.D. McKissic is such a good, off-speed receiving back, and it's such a good complementary duo between him and Gibson. I really like their backfield. Gibson being the primary rusher and McKissic offering that speedy pass-catching option. It's got to be one of the best duos in the league, honestly. In terms of their wide receiver core, Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, and Jahan Dotson. I did not like the Jahan Dotson selection. I did not think it was a good pick, especially when they drafted Diami Brown and Dax Milne, within the past 2 years, right? And Antonio Gandy Golden, who they put on wide receiver and then tight end, and now he's retired after like 2 years. Terry McLaurin, great. Curtis Samuel, injury prone, but he's supposed to be fully healthy for this year. And Cam Sims is a very underrated guy who's probably not very well known outside of the Washington fan base, but I think I think all Cam Sims needs is a chance to be a tremendous wide receiver. And then the Washington Redskins go in and draft Jahan Dotson. I mean, I just think it's incredibly stupid. I think it's a bad pick. No hate on Jahan Dotson, but it's a reach. It was a reach on draft night. I think it was a bad pick. I just think it was a bad pick. I mean, even guys down here like Kelvin Harmon is a good receiver who I think needs more opportunities. And we just draft Jahan Dotson. Makes no sense to me. Whatever. I don't like the pick. But Terry McLaurin obviously is a great wide receiver, top 10 in the league probably. So with a quarterback like Wentz, big things are expected. Tight end Logan Thomas and John Bates. I think John Bates is a great second tight end. Probably not super well known outside of Washington, but I think he's a serviceable guy. Logan Thomas does get a fair amount of respect. And he's a great tight end. Hopefully he can stay a little bit more healthy this year. And Washington's a team that was really affected by injuries. They seem to always be affected by injuries, but if Logan Thomas can stay healthy, he is a great number 2 option to Terry McLaurin. Here with the offensive line, we get into a little bit of mediocrity. Like, not mediocrity. The roster is pretty mediocre, but I feel like the offensive line, especially last year, they were pummeled by injuries, and I don't feel like it's a strong unit even at full health. Charles Roulier and Wes Schweitzer are great options, but even Cornelius Lucas stepped up pretty big last year in face of all the injuries. The offensive line is okay, maybe slightly below average. I don't think they're a great unit. I think they could use some help. But at the same time, I don't think that they're bad. I mean, they're better than the Bills, and the Bills went to the Super Bowl. So, shouldn't say they're better than the Bills. They're at least on par with the Bills, right? And the Bills made the Super Bowl. So, it really shouldn't be that. I mean, it's a big deal, but, if you have a good enough offense, as we can see, it's not a huge deal. Defense was a problem last year. I think they were like a bottom 5 offense in the entire league in terms of like yards per play or like yards allowed. And they were hurt by injuries again, like Chase Young, Montez Sweat was out for an extended period of time. They ended up losing Matt Ioannidis, who that hurts. However, they still probably have the best defensive line in the entire NFL. I would say you could say the Rams maybe, but I like the Skins. I mean, assuming they stay healthy, I think a healthy Commanders D line is the best in the entire league. Now it's just about limiting the yards per play and rushing the quarterback a little bit more as well. I thought. In terms of the linebacking group, they're young. Cole Holcomb, Jamin Davis are two. Jamin Davis is going to be his second year, and Cole Holcomb, I think it's his third or fourth. I like both those guys. I thought Jamin Davis was. I wasn't sure how to feel about that pick at the time. Jumping that JOK guy on Cleveland, who ended up being pretty good as well. But I don't think Jamin Davis is any worse than him. I think that they're a little weak, especially in terms of coverage. It seems like they're pretty weak in coverage for a group of linebackers. David Mayo is not good. Like Cole Holcomb and Jamin Davis, I at least have hope in because these guys run around. They give a great effort. They're relatively fast. But when you allow I think they allowed like 6 yards per play, you got to start looking at your linebackers. They're a young group, so I have faith, I have patience in Cole Holcomb and Jamin Davis specifically. David Mayo is below average in terms of the league, but Cole Holcomb and Jamin Davis hopefully can take a step in the right direction, and and really solidify themselves as a young group that is on the incline, and becoming a group that is going to be atop of those in the NFL. In terms of the secondary, I think the secondary is pretty strong. Kendall Fuller is great. Bobby McCain, they just re-signed. William Jackson is another good corner. I wouldn't say any of these guys are elite, but, they're all pretty good. Cameron Curl is on an amazing contract. Cameron Curl is probably one of the most underrated safeties in the entire league. Cameron Curl is so good, it's not even funny. And kind of as we go through this roster, you can see how it makes sense that the Redskins have decently high expectations, and then somehow they fall short of them every year. And I know they're hampered by injuries, but in my entire lifetime, they've had I don't even know if they've maybe won one playoff game my entire lifetime. I mean, it's crazy. That story gets old, and I've been hearing it for a long time of, Washington's always injured or whatever, So this year, I'm not going to put my expectations too high. I think they have a solid roster. I think they have a roster that could compete for the NFC East if everything goes right for them. I think they have a roster that should, maybe not should, but could make the playoffs. Ultimately, at this point, it's up to Washington and the coaching staff to put together a season that they can be proud of and actually do something, because it's just the story is getting old of Washington having a good enough roster to make the playoffs, and they don't, or they do, and they disappoint in the playoffs. I know the 1 year with Heineke making the Bucks. I mean, no one expected them to win that game, and they played well. But then you follow it up with a year that's pretty disappointing, and we can use the injury excuse all day, but it doesn't do much for me. So, we can take a look at their transactions in the offseason. Not much of note here. It was a good job extending Terry McLaurin, a good job getting McKissick to stay. Other than that, not much has happened. They signed Trey Turner, but at this point, I don't really think he's going to be a starter. Re-sign Cornelius Lucas is good for the depth, but ultimately not much here. Landon Collins, getting rid of Landon Collins, I think was a good play. He ate up a lot of salary, and he was okay, but not worth what he was paid. No way. So let's go through the season projection. To start against Jacksonville, obviously, Jacksonville is very weak. I think they're going to have another poor year. I hope Trevor Lawrence can improve, but I'm not really banking on that much improvement. So Washington wins that one at home. Washington at Detroit. This is an interesting matchup because I think Detroit got better on the offensive side of the ball. I don't think they got much better on the defensive side of the ball. I think Washington got better on the offensive side of the ball and, will be better on the defensive side of the ball than they were last year. Certainly have nowhere to go but up. And on paper, they have a good defense. I like Washington here on the road. Assuming that their offense can not be dismal, and I feel like Carson Wentz is definitely an improvement than Taylor Heineke, and they have a better defense than Detroit does. So I think I like Washington to be able to hold off Detroit. The third game of the year against the Eagles, they are at home. I think it's an interesting game, and I think it's a game where, it's pretty close. I don't really like the Philadelphia offense this year. I think it'll be okay. I think it'll be average. Similarly, I think the Redskins offense will be maybe slightly above average. I mean, at least on paper, it should be. This game, I like Washington because they're at home. I don't think Washington's good enough to sweep the Eagles. I think they will lose at Philly, but um, I think that they will be able to beat Philadelphia at home. At Dallas, I think they lose. Dallas has a good offense. Dallas has a pretty good defense. I think the defense got a little bit worse for Dallas, and by no means is it that good. I think Dallas wins at home. I think their offense is too good. Against the Titans, I think the Titans are going to be kind of weak. I think the Titans are going to be fighting for a wild card spot, and I'm not sure that they'll actually get one. I think that their defense is all right. I think that their offense is only okay as well because I think Tannehill and the passing game is not very good. I don't want to be the biased Redskins fan who says that Washington wins this game at home. I'm going to err on the side of caution and give it to Tennessee. I think they have a good coaching staff. I think that their defense is okay. And I think Derrick Henry can run for 200 yards. Now, our defensive line is quite good and can hopefully hold Derrick Henry to not that much. I think it'll be a close game regardless. I'm going to give it to Tennessee because I think that they are the more reputable team in the sense of they live up to expectations. Washington does not. So I err on the side of caution and give it to Tennessee. Against the Bears, Washington wins this game, and I'm not even going to really explain it. I think it could be closer than people think, but I think Washington will be able to, pull it out and not collapse against Chicago. Against Green Bay, obviously Green Bay wins. Aaron Rodgers is too good. They have a great defense. Not much else to say there. At Indianapolis, I think that Indianapolis also wins. They have a great defense. They have a very good offense with Jonathan Taylor. Matt Ryan is going to go in there and be able to throw the ball. Probably better than Carson Wentz, in my opinion. I think that Matt Ryan will do a much better job than Carson Wentz. He certainly probably will be a better leader. I don't think Matt Ryan loses that game in Jacksonville, and I think he would make the playoffs. I think Indianapolis will be a great team. I think they'll win that division. Okay, Vikings at Washington. I'm going to go ahead and give the Vikings the win here. I think the Vikings offense is too good to really lose to Washington. They have too much firepower on that offense with Thielen and Jefferson and Dalvin Cook. To lose a game against Washington that is just, Washington I think will struggle with consistency this year like they do most years with a new quarterback. I don't see Washington being a very consistent football team, and I see that being their failure against a team like the Vikings with a very good offense, even though the Vikings defense isn't great. In Philly, I'm going to give it to Philly. Philly has a great atmosphere. It's going to be hard to win in Philly. I think that their offense is good and dynamic. It's hard to defend against. I'm not a big Jalen Hurts believer, but I think he is hard to defend against, and I don't think that the Redskins have shown a great job in defending against Jalen Hurts. I think Washington and Philadelphia are somewhat on the same level, and I think they split this year, so I'm going to give Philly the advantage at home. Against the Texans, I don't think I need to do much explaining here. I'm going to go ahead and give it to Washington. Against the Falcons, similarly, I don't think I have to do too much explaining. Philadelphia. Atlanta is going to be pretty abysmal. I'm going to give it to Washington at home. This is where things get interesting for me. Washington against New York 2 weeks in a row, at least for Washington. Washington, on paper, should win both of these games. They should win both. I am a little concerned about this Week 13, the first game. Washington has a history of playing poorly against the Giants. And we saw that last year when the Redskins won on a last-second field goal against the Giants after they missed a field goal, but the Giants were ruled offside, and they got to retake it, and then they made it and won. And that was a New York team last year that was bad. I mean, I didn't think that the Redskins would lose that game, and it was super close. and this is where I kind of want to like err on the side of caution and not give Washington the benefit of the doubt, because they have not earned the benefit of the doubt. And so I am worried to say that they're going to sweep New York. I'm very worried to say that, even though New York on paper sucks and is worse than Washington in pretty much every way. You know, I have no doubt that Washington wins this game off of a bye after playing New York in Week 13. But Week 13 is very tricky for me. It's very tricky for me. And if I give them this win, they'd be on a 4-game win streak. The NFL's hard. I'm going to give it to New York at home. As much as it pains me to say that, we have a history of playing poorly against the Giants, I'm going to give it to New York at home. I hope we win. I think it'll be a close game. But I just don't think Washington has earned the benefit of the doubt, and that's why I'm giving it to New York. Washington against San Francisco, and at San Francisco. I don't like San Francisco this year. I don't think, I think they're going to be a fringe playoff team. I don't really know if they're going to make the playoffs. I would say no, honestly, just because of how bad Trey Lance has seemed, and all the negative media attention towards him and his showing at training camp so far. With that being said, I think that San Francisco has a great coaching staff. I think they have a great defense, and I think that they have great offensive weapons and good offensive play calling. And because of that, I cannot give Washington the victory in San Francisco. I'm going to give San Francisco the victory here. Similarly with the Giants game, I don't think Washington has earned the benefit of me saying, oh, well, Trey Lance is too bad to pull out a victory. Even though I think the San Francisco 49ers will regress this year, I think that they beat Washington. Washington at home against the Browns. Deshaun Watson will be back, and I think his kinks will be all worked out by Week 17. I think that the Browns offense is going to be very good with Deshaun Watson, as much as I don't like the guy. And I think that their defense, their defense is good. Their offense is good. I don't think that there's much debate here. I think that the Browns win on the road in Washington. The final game of the year, I'm going to go ahead and give this game to Washington. The last game of the year, we played pretty decent, at least within the last few years, against Dallas. We're at home, and, this is going to be, 8-9. Is that good for a wild card? I doubt it. I really doubt it. I don't think that the Commanders make the playoffs. I do think that they beat Dallas in the final game of the year. I think they go out on a high note. But I don't think that they make the playoffs. I think that they go 8-9. I think that they disappoint ultimately, just because I have no other reason than to believe that they would disappoint. I think that a Week 5 matchup against the Titans is a possible win. I think that they could possibly win this Week 13 game against the Giants as well. And, that would make them 10-7 and a fringe playoff team. Could they make the wild card? They could compete for a wild card spot. They could. Do they? We'll have to wait and see. I just don't feel like they've earned the right for us to really predict them to be in that position. I could see it, but I think we have to predict them to be an 8-9 football team, and they have to prove to us otherwise. That's really all I got today, guys. I don't know if you guys are Washington fans. If you guys aren't, let me know either way what you guys think of the Washington Commanders this year. Let me know if you think that they're going to be better, if you think they're going to be worse, what you think Carson Wentz is going to be like this year, if he's going to return to form, or if he's going to continue to perform on a below average level. Even though I think in total last year he played pretty good. Carson Wentz had a good season last year on the Colts, and that season was tarnished by a poor showing in Jacksonville. And I feel like people kind of don't remember his season. But, when you do something like that against Jacksonville, maybe that's what you deserve. Let me know in the comments, guys, what kind of videos you want to see next, what team you want to see next. I appreciate it if you guys would like the video, subscribe. Let me know in the comments your thoughts, and I will see you guys in the next video.